greetings from all of us in Athens, Greece. It is particularly exciting to be joined by international colleagues as well as colleagues from the RE, the American College of Greece. I will share my screen immediately so we can get started. And our panel on collaborative learning and student interactivity is a collaboration of the fellows of the Teaching and Learning Center. The fellows are appointed over a 2-year period, and they usually present one panel presentation a year. This year, our theme had to do with student interactivity. It is becoming increasingly more and more important to establish active learning pedagogy in the classroom, especially, and emphasize in class collaborations, especially in an age of AI. So you see our names there. I'm the director. I will be making a short introduction to the idea of collaborative learning, and then we're going to have a number of presentations. We hope we will have time for discussion at the end, but we're also hoping that you're going to interact by logging into our Padlet, and you can see the QR code on the screen. And let me also make sure that you get the URL in the chat. So right now you should be able to also see the URL. You can go onto the Padlet. You're going to find resources there. You're going to find more information about us, about our school, about the Teaching and Learning Center, all the bibliography that I'm going to be talking about. But most significantly, I'm hoping that you will contribute by listing your own ideas and thoughts about interactivity, what activities you are using. We also have a poll there that hopefully you will also participate in, so we can see how interactive things are in our classrooms. And this will be something that will hopefully engage all of us in further discussion. This is the order with which we're going to be discussing things. We will start by actually taking you out of the classroom with Katerina Nikolopoulou, giving us a true experiential activity that takes the students outside the classroom and helps them develop perspective. A role play activity will follow with Eugenia Tzoumaka. Then we're going to have a recording by a psychology colleague, Irene Karayianni, who couldn't be with us today, and how she uses Think, Pair, Share by incorporating quizzes. The last 3 presentations will be by Athina Zotou using Slido and how somebody can introduce and review concepts. Kyparissiadis will be focusing on a brainstorming group activity. And last but not least, Avgerinou will be looking at how we can use Canva for a collaborative concept mapping. So, after a brief presentation of the principles of collaborative learning, you will have the 6 diverse learning activities that I just mentioned. And we're hoping that they are going to spark and make you think of ways in which you can also adopt them for your own course and disciplinary perspective. And the diversity of these activities, but also the fact that they use different tools and apps, hopefully again will mean that you can share your own tools and apps as well as your own activities. And the Padlet hopefully will become a kind of treasure trove of activity and common sharing. So, why do we want to increase interaction in the classroom as part of our active learning pedagogy? We know that motivating students and engaging students is something that becomes even more increased when we have students work in pairs and in groups. Their emotional engagement increases, and that enables not only motivation, but also the cognitive understanding of what is happening. Deeper engagement is a result because the students, through something that looks like more authentic learning, find such activities usually more meaningful and more appealing. All the sources that you see in the slides are available on the Padlet, so you can always go there and find one of the references. Now, the cognitive is not the only thing that is motivated and enabled, but there is also that very significant reflective meta level that occurs when, in discussion with their fellow students, they come to evaluate their own points of view, and a lot of times also change through an authentic learning process. We know also that collaborative learning is something that students tell us they like, and we also have evidence of the strong correlation between deeper learning and academic performance. So, in short, peer instruction benefits student learning. We have enough evidence to know that this happens for sure. So, what can we do? So, all the references, as I said, are on the Padlet. Again, if you've joined more recently, the QR code is in the chat. The QR code is on the screen. The URL is in the chat. I will now turn it over to my colleagues so that they can each one share, and hopefully at the end we will also have time for discussion. I will be monitoring the chat as well, so please feel free to ask any questions. So, Katerina is our first presenter.
So, hello, this is Katerina. I'm from the Theatre Arts Department, a member of the TLC group, and I will share with you an outdoor activity, collaborative activity. The purpose is for me, but it can adapt to whatever needs anybody has. For artistic projects, very often our students lose themselves. They create these endless topics. They cannot narrow them down. They cannot see the different ways to look at something. So I use this for them. It helps them clarify their ideas. The activity is based on Kolb's experiential learning cycle. The idea is to experience, to reflect, to think and act. So experiential learning, we know that it helps dramatically our students. So
Katerina, I don't know if you're not sharing your slides, just...
I am. What's happening? Do you see it now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, sorry about that. So I don't know what happened, but okay. So I go over this, and this is where we are supposed to be. So what we do, students go into pairs. We have a big campus. We have a part of a forest in the campus. So this is very easy to do. I choose a path that goes through a part of the forest. And it's a particular path that people are taking. And they go into pairs, and they have this paper that gives them instructions of what to collect, let's say, a quote unquote. I give you these examples, 2 items out of place. They have to take pictures. of two items that look out of place, two things that impress them, a distractive sound, a pleasant sound, the most beautiful plant or flower, the best part of the walk. This can be endless. So they take pictures, they collect experiences, they have a notebook, they write down things, and they reach a point where they share, the two of them, exchange their notes, their pictures, they talk about it. Usually they laugh about it because most of the times have collected totally different things, and they've been impressed with different things, and they thought that a distractive sound for one person was a beautiful sound and for another wasn't. And after they do that, they have to share that experience with the rest of the class. While they share with each other, they realize the differences, the similarities, and then all together we listen the outcome. They reflect, they talk about that experience, they realize how differently we see the same things. And for me, this is the most important part, to realize that even if we have the same experience, that same experience cannot be the same because we are different people.
Thank you, Katerina. We will discuss at the end, but our first and second activity focuses very much about getting students to have an embodied experience, to physically experience outside the classroom, Katerina's example, or through role play, which is what Eugenia Tzoumaka will talk to us now. Eugenia.
Let me unmute myself so that I will not be talking to myself. I hope the screen sharing is working well. So what I am going to be discussing today is an indoor activity, however, an equally interesting one, facilitating the interactivity of students. The idea here is cultivating the self-awareness, which is an essential skill for our students in marketing and in the business school of the American College of Greece. And the rationale behind exercising those activities is that despite the knowledge that this is a crucial skill, however, the capabilities on how we actually manage to understand ourselves are often limited. So self-awareness, both at the internal end, like how well we know ourselves, but at the external level as well, how well we perceive our view from the others, how others see us, are limited. So to this orientation, being able to self-reflect as well as receiving feedback from others are imperative. The context of this activity is a course in personal branding for professional, where students essentially need to understand themselves prior to building their brand. So they need to understand their identity as professionals, their brand identity. So the course is oriented to facilitate this process of understanding and then help students develop a strategy applying the marketing skills. So being able to cultivate this self-awareness is imperative, and those type of exercises are really helpful. From the literature on role-playing, we know that it allows students engage in empathy, it allows and helps adopting a different perspective, it fosters self-reflection, and ultimately this leads to heightened self-awareness. So being able to immerse the student in some challenging situation that they will actually have to experience and cope with in their job environment allows them to understand and also reveal their true colors. So the role-playing allows for this authentic type of interaction, and instructors there are burdened with the role of the moderation. This was an activity initially communicated to us to the Teaching and Learning Center at the American College of Greece by an expert colleague, and it is a pair mode interaction scenario. So the exercises goes like this. It is a day at the office, and on the one hand, we have the manager who assumes role A, and on the other hand, we have the subordinate with the role B. And here we see some conflicting agendas that need to come together in a shared understanding. So the manager has multiple projects, one of which is Project C, a very challenging one, but they have received a subpar deliverable by the subordinate. So all three projects must be submitted to the client next week. Team members have been complaining about the lack of teamwork, and the manager also faces some personal challenge on their agenda, the promotion being at stake. So the idea of the meeting from the manager perspective is communicate the concerns and find solution for the project improvement. The subordinate, on the other hand, who also aspires for a future promotion, is highly focused on this specific project, the Project C, and he or she thinks that it's emphasized by the manager. At the time being, family priorities, responsibilities are excessive, so the subordinate leaves job early on time to go home, and they continue work there. And ultimately, they feel not heard, they feel not supported by the other team members, while they have the self-perception of a very high performance at this deliverable. So they come to the meeting with the standpoint of an opportunity to showcase why I deserve a promotion for the very well job done despite the lack of support. So during this exercise, there is a discussion, authentic interaction, and the instructor moderates this. They will walk around, they will assist on answering questions by the student. The students, while they're discussing, they need to come to a shared outcome and reflect by writing down the outcome of the meeting. After we finish this process, the instructor reveals the confidential information, the background, which is not known, and therefore empathy is not logical, it's only sentimental, and then a nodal discussion follows. So students are asked to self-reflect on the process, how they personally experience this. They discuss what happened during the meeting, and they are prompted to respond to the question, what did you learn about yourself? So they are prompted to the very point of coerce to reflect on deeper insights about their personalities and their behavior. And then, as an instructor, we ask them to respectfully reflect about what students learn about their peers, about their pair. And this is an avenue for students to gain more insights about themselves and how they are viewed by others. Of course, sometimes this is a painful process. Resistance can be shown. However, this happens in the most safe environment of a classroom where mutual respect and openness is fostered. So hopefully this is also evaluated by the students who enjoy it, at least from what they reflect in retrospect. Some references are here too, but I will leave the floor to the next presentation so that we will keep also up with the time restrictions.
Thank you very, very much. And Eugenia, and after a couple of our longer activities, we're going to now look at activities that may take less time. Let me remind everyone, we've already had a couple of contributions on our Padlet that we would like our Padlet to collect. So the URL of the Padlet is in the chat. And hopefully participants are going to tell us more about their own little pair or group activities as well. We're going to have the recording now because our colleague Irene Karayianni could not be with us and her Think Pair Share activity.
Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Karayianni from the American College of Greece. Learning is a social process, and the clinical evidence shows that interactivity is linked with improved learning outcomes. Therefore, it is important to provide learning activities that invite students to engage with each other. Today, I'll be discussing how I have applied the variation of the think, pair, share activity using quizzes. It's an online classroom response system, and I've used that to foster student-to-student interactivity. It's a cooperative, active learning strategy where students work together and combine their knowledge to find solutions. It encourages students to think individually about a question or a problem, discuss their thoughts in pairs, and finally share their insights with the whole class. This way, the activity engages students in all three levels: individual, pair, class. Using quizzes for real-time polls during the individual thinking and pair stages significantly enhances engagement and interactivity. This activity offers great flexibility. It can be as simple or as complicated as you want it to be. It can be applied in a variety of courses. Its duration can also be adjusted to fit the significance of the question, ranging from 5 minutes to an entire lesson. As a first step, you need to explain to the students the process and purpose of the activity and how it helps learning. Emphasize the importance of individual thinking, meaningful discussion, and collaborative learning. Maybe even acknowledge that it may be out of a student's comfort zone to participate. If they have never used quizzes before, you need to demonstrate the tool, how it works. And by the way, it is very user-friendly. I've never had a student who's had any difficulty with it. You then ask a question or a problem that is relevant to the lesson objectives. The key to a successful activity is alignment. The question must align with the instructional goal of the day, something that provokes thought and is challenging. It is easy to incorporate more than one think per share activities in a given class period, and you can use it any time during the lesson. At the think stage, students are given a moment to reflect on the question individually, considering the response. Give them enough time to think and answer the question on quizzes. The time needed will depend on the complexity of the problem. This solitary reflection encourages independent thinking and allows them to process information without any bias or influence from other students. This is an example of this stage. I have posed a question about two similar phenomena that usually students get very confused about. And actually we see here that almost half of the students, when they think about it individually, they make a mistake. Next, you show a blank screen on the projector so that they do not get distracted. Students pair up to discuss their answers. In an online class, you would do that with breakout rooms. You ask them to turn to the person next to them and share their responses and thought process with each other. In pairs, they discuss, they explain the rationale to each other, they compare answers. So this stage encourages peer instruction. To make sure that both students in a group have a chance to do that, let them know when they are supposed to switch talking. We do not want a student to dominate the discussion in a pair, because peer-to-peer interaction and instruction exposes students to different viewpoints. And this is a very critical step for learning. After the discussion, students arrive at a consensus and respond to the same question on quizzes, but this time as a pair. Of course, students may revise the answers based on the discussion, and you display the results on the projector again. This is an example from this stage. After the discussion, we have seen a shift towards the correct answer. As a final step, you gather the class back together. At this stage, the projector is showing the responses provided by the pairs, and students see the difference in the results. Pairs share their discussions with a larger group. This can be done through a general discussion, selecting maybe a couple of pairs to present, and the class is reflecting on the answers and the reasoning. In the end, you wrap up and you emphasize the key takeaways and correct any misunderstandings to guide students to connect their insights directly to the lesson objectives. This reinforces the lesson objectives, but also encourages students to see the practical applications of their knowledge in relation to those objectives. So to sum up, by combining this activity with quizzes, you can create a dynamic classroom environment that increases student interactivity, deepens their understanding and engagement with the material, but of course, doing so with a very fun activity. Thank you.
And this was Athina. This was Irene Karayianni talking to us about how technology can make, I think, pair share activity even more effective. And now we will ask Athina Zotou to talk to us about how Slido can improve and make even more interactive a similar kind of activity.
Hello. This is Athina. I'm an assistant professor in marketing department. I will share with you a similar activity as Irene discussed before, learning in pairs or groups. It's a very simple activity, fun activity as well, that applies to all level courses. And overall, it encourages the interaction and it keeps the students engaged throughout the lecture and keeps them engaged with learning content as well. So the purpose is to motivate engagement and interaction among students and also experience the group's dynamics and stimulate discussion as well. I'm using the Slido platform, which is very simple to use. There is a Slido extension for PPT as well, so for easier accessibility. And I create a new poll, share the QR code or the link with the students so they can participate and use Slido to provide their answers. You can create a new Slido poll. There are a lot of options. The options depend on what you want to do and what the question is about. It also has the option for word cloud, open text. I use for this activity the open text option because, as you can see in the screen, I will explain in details the activity in the next slide, but I'm giving them a question and their task is to answer this question, so I need the open text. The activity, the process, how I do this is divide the class randomly into pairs or groups. It depends on the students' number, of course. And they are given a question relevant to specific topic theoretical concept that will be discussed that day in class. And each group thinks of the question. I'm not giving them the individual thinking option, as Irene mentioned before. I'm asking them to think with their pair or group, the other group members, of the question and respond through the Slido. The answer summarizes the group view. I give them 8 to 10 minutes maximum to discuss the question, and then all students discuss the similarities or the differences among the answers provided. Each group writes their answers, so we all see the different responses in the Slido, and the discussion should take 5 to 8 minutes, no more than that, so that we can keep with the lecture and the second part, let's say, of the activity, which is usually before the class ends, after the specific topic has been discussed, the concept is presented, the students, the groups, same groups, are asked to answer the same question, which they contribute to a new poll in Slido, of course. So I'm giving them few minutes to discuss and provide their new answer. And the activity ends after discussing how the newer answers differ from their earlier ones, and of course some similarities and differences among the different answers provided by the different groups. So an example, the before question, so at the beginning of the class, I'm asking them about a specific concept, because the course that I'm teaching, this particular example is from marketing communication course. So I'm asking them about marketing communication element, and this is how it looks, their answers in Slido. And before the class ends, the question is, of course, like similar to the previous one, the same, but after the sales promotion concept has been discussed, and they're providing their new contribution, their new answer in Slido. So we do compare, all students see the answers of all groups in Slido. They are giving comments or asking questions. They do have interaction with each other. And some key conclusions, also based on relevant literature, is that working with others and working together in person, in groups, this also offers the opportunity to share knowledge and also generate some new insights or some new knowledge as well. And it's quite helpful for students learning to also discuss, review different approaches on a subject matter. So these are my key conclusions, some references, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Athina.
I will stop share, please.
Now we have two final presentations. George Kyparissiadis will talk about brainstorming in a pair group setting.
Hi, everyone. I'm hoping my screen sharing is working. Okay, now, is it full screen? Perfect. So I'll be sharing a brief activity that we are doing in the classroom. We started this year, but we're definitely repeating it with my colleague with whom we're teaching this course. It's an activity that we came up with to tackle a glitchy, let's say, part of the process of the assignments of the students. We are teaching the course Foundations of Media. It's a level 4 course. It's a course taken by students in their second year. So they have some experience with critical thinking and they have some experience with studying and reading, but they're still at their very first steps of that process. So as my colleagues have already said, cooperation in the classroom, collaboration among students has all kinds of benefits that we relied on for the purposes of this exercise. First of all, students, of course, have a more positive attitude towards the material they're learning, and they're more motivated to learn as well. And also, they have a better impression at the end about the subject they have examined, the teacher, which shows in the evaluations at the end of the term, themselves, and with each other as well. So such an exercise, if it takes place at the beginning of the term, can also bond the students with each other more strongly and help them collaborate in future projects. So, as I said, this is an exercise we came up with to support the process that we have been following for their midterm assignment, which is asking the students to write an essay. It's a 2,000-word essay on a topic of their choice. So the students themselves have to find an angle of the subject that interests them and elaborate on that, and then write an essay through research and critical thinking. The course is Foundations of Media, so we are discussing all kinds of media theories, and this is where it gets glitchy for the students because there are so many media theories. The graph on the left is intentionally meant to confuse you, simply because it shows only a few of the media theories that we are discussing in the classroom and from which the students can pick. So what happened until now was that students would pick a topic, write a short proposal, essay proposal, send it to the instructor, receive feedback, and there would be a lot of back and forth, a lot of confusion, a lot of frustration, and many students will leave it at the last minute, and the whole process did not go very well as often. So instead, what we decided to do this term in 2 separate classrooms in the same week was make this part of the learning experience by asking the students to come up with a topic in the classroom collaboratively. So the way we run this is before the workshop took place in the classroom, we sent an email with instructions to the students. In this email, we outlined the requirements for the project. We reminded the students what they need to be doing. They have to come up with a topic for their essay, and gave them some directions about what topic to choose, how to handle it, what they should be looking for. We sent that email before the class, and then during that class, for the entire hour that each of us had in their availability, we ran this workshop with the students. So what we did firstly was revisit the instructions that the students had received, because very few of them had read it, as you can imagine. So we recapped briefly what the students were supposed to be doing. Then we split the students in groups of 2 or 3 students, basically as they were sitting, and asked them to work with each other on each student's topic, support each other in outlining that topic and finding angles, asking questions to each other, questioning the choices, and then each student to spend a few minutes to write their proposition and upload it on a Padlet. The image on the right shows the screen, the screen that was on the slide that was on the screen while the exercise was taking place. Students had about 10 minutes. It took them a bit longer to come up with their ideas, and then a QR code to visit the Padlet and upload their propositions. This left ample of time for the entire class to be able to view the Padlet on the main screen. And then with my direction, we discussed as many of the posts that were posted on Padlet as possible. So the topics that the students had outlined and elaborated on were visible to all and discussed openly in the classroom with feedback being given. So even if we didn't have the time to go through every single proposal in the classroom, still the students benefited by hearing the feedback that other proposals had gotten, and they could then apply that feedback to their proposition for the later stage, which was to take the topic, flesh it out a bit more, address the feedback they had received, and send it afterwards to the instructor by email for it to be approved. So these are the results on the screen, the two Padlets that were collected during this activity in the two separate classrooms. In total, we had 32 students, and the Padlet submissions were 30. I had 2 students that refused to participate. And they were like, okay, you will have to write an essay whether you like it or not. It's okay if you skip this exercise. They found it very useful, the students. I asked for written feedback after this exercise, and I picked some words that indicated that the students found it effective and engaging. They thought it was empowering and motivating. They loved working with their students. And one of them said orally that they felt safer discussing it with their colleagues before sharing it with me, because they felt that any criticism would be milder at that early stage. It also facilitated the process for us instructors, because we could answer questions to all the students simultaneously, questions that each of those would have asked separately otherwise, and give feedback collectively as well as individually on these propositions. The other great thing is that the students started working on their essays much earlier than they would normally have, because the starting date was the date that we had set for that workshop, which meant that students would from then on start working on their essays, have time to deliver drafts, and work on their essays much more effectively. So this is the exercise. Thank you very much for your time. I'm hoping you found it inspiring and helpful. I will stop sharing and pass it on to the next.
Thank you, George. So given that George was using Padlet for this exercise, I want to thank those that have contributed to the Padlet we have set up for your contributions. And as Maria begins to share her screen to prepare for our final presentation, there is a poll on the Padlet also that has to do with collaborative learning. So Canva is the last tool we're going to showcase. Maria.
Okay, so about concept mapping, we know, let me just go here, we know about concept mapping, all the benefits, because this is a kind of old veteran instructional strategy that involves creating visuals to represent relationships between ideas, concepts, or pieces of information. The strategy has been found through multiple, research studies and so on, to help learners organize and structure their knowledge, making it easier for them to understand and recall complex subjects. And we also know that it enhances student understanding, memory retention, critical thinking, collaboration, and creativity, among other benefits. But what about collaborative concept mapping? Here's a visual summary of what, again, research proclaims as being the benefits of people working collaboratively on producing their concept maps. I will not spend time going over this. I mean, you have the summary in front of you. And so for the specific collaborative activity that I will discuss here, this is facilitated through two edtech tools that are quite popular among educators currently. So one is Jamboard and the other one is Canva. Jamboard is a collaborative digital whiteboard that enables real-time brainstorming and idea sharing. It is particularly useful for the initial stages of concept mapping, where the group can where group input and interaction are critical. And then Canva is a versatile tool for creating visually appealing concept maps and other graphic materials. It offers a range of templates and design elements that can be customized to suit specific needs. Now moving on to assignment description and distractions. Let me now give you some context to this. First of all, this is a graduate class within the MA in Learning Design and Technology program. It focuses on research methods at the introductory kind of level. The purpose of the assignment is to set the stage for students to develop their ideas about their research proposal. And actually, there is a prerequisite before engaging with concept mapping, that is student familiarity with concept maps, concept map definition, terminology, and also examples. And toward that end, I asked that the students review, prior to beginning with this activity, they review a video that I have given them. So here are the steps. The assignment begins with, first of all, they access Jamboard and they jointly identify an area of interest or topic in the learning sciences, which they call their level 1 node. So this is the first level. And then they collaboratively brainstorm, still in Jamboard, to expand the Jamboard by jotting down 3 different subtopics or sub-areas that are related to that first concept or topic, and this is their level 2 nodes. And then this is what they need to do. They need to transfer to Canva. So this is an example of Canva that includes all the different things and the levels that I'm just referring to right now. And so they need to convert their text to a concept map with the main topic right at the center. So this is their level 1 node. And then they need to include the subtopics, each one branching out of level 1 node, and they call those level 2 nodes. And these are the rectangles here, here, and here. They also need to label, the links between the 2 levels to explain what kind of relationship there exists between the 2. They then need to add 1 question or hypothesis under each of the topics, okay? And these questions could start as what if, how, why, what is the relationship between this and this, what are the effects, and so on. These are the level 3 nodes, and again, they need to label the links in order to show the connections. For each of the questions hypotheses, they also need to continue branching out, the branching out process in order to explain whether a qualitative, quantitative, or mixed design is called for. And then this is their level 4, of course, and then they're finishing with level 5, all those gray squares here, where they explain what kind of ethical issues are involved in this research proposal. So again, the thing in terms of IRB is going to be a serious or a minor ethical issue, for instance, and then they need to label it accordingly. So this is the end of the assignment. And just to wrap up, the question is this activity, or has this activity fulfilled the goal for which it was designed? Both my students and myself, I would say hand down, yes. Integrating collaborative concept mapping into the initial stages of research proposal development definitely enhances student understanding, collaboration, and organizational and critical thinking skills, which are really important for the learning design field. And additionally, this activity impacts their psychology in a positive way. Just going to stop this here. And by reducing the anxiety they have and any kind of psychological block that we know that it is an unfortunate, however, a well-documented response to research methods, courses in education. And finally, it also boosts student motivation and fosters a supportive environment. Thank you very much. Hope you found this helpful.